Welcome to the First Things First podcast. And first things first, we need you to subscribe and leave comments, letting us know what you think of the show. We're listening. I'm Nick Wright, joined by two of my favorite people, Jenna Wolfe, Chris Carter. Now, let's get the show started.
Welcome back to First Things First. So Chris Carter is in Minneapolis right now, hanging out, talking to the people. He will join us in about a half hour. A lot of people to talk to. Chris Broussard is here in his place.
Good to see you, man. How are you?
Another Chris.
We did. We always do. One leaves, one sits down. That's just how we do it here on the show. So on yesterday's show, we put up a number of graphics behind you here of like team logos, right, of possible destinations for LeBron James should he leave. You know what was missing from that list? Because we all laughed.
It should still be missing.
We laughed when Nick Wright brought it up. Was the Golden State Warriors, because we assumed that LeBron had a better shot of joining Bette Midler in an after-school special to talk about baking sales than going to the Warriors. But according to reports, America, LeBron James could be meeting with Golden State to discuss them as a possible destination. Keep in mind, it wouldn't be easy for the Warriors. They'd need to create about $35 million in cap room, which would involve a sign and trade, maybe with Chris Thompson and Andre Iguodala, plus Kevin Durant would have to take less money. But a chance is a chance is a chance, and it is getting us all talking. So, Nick, I start with you. What was your reaction to the latest LeBron report? Here we go.
Why can't he go to Golden State? I've heard for the last year and a half from the media that you can't criticize Kevin Durant. It's not fair.
Why did you criticize Kevin Durant?
Well, hold on. Absolutely. And I absolutely did. But I've been told for a year and a half, if you are a free agent, it is about happiness. It is about, my partner Chris Carter would say, I want to see excellence at the highest levels, and that everything is fair game. The second best player in the world joining a 73-win team with a two-time defending MVP, fair game. That's what I've heard. And I've heard that doesn't make them some unfair mountain to climb, because I then heard LeBron losing to them in the finals. It's another blotch on his resume, another finals loss. So if Kevin Durant can join them in his prime form, when they're coming off 73 wins and up 3-1 in the finals and had won the title the previous year, and Steph was the unanimous MVP, then sure, LeBron could. I don't think he will. I think it's unlikely. And they talked about in the report by Chris Haynes, and by the way, it is worth noting, Chris Haynes used to work in Cleveland and cover the Cavs. Yep. Now he covers the Warriors in Golden State. He is a good reporter. Like, it's credible, and I respect his work. So I don't think he's making this up out of thin air. No. And I bet CB's got more insight on that than I do. But they talked about the things that would have to happen for LeBron to get the $35 million, the max deal. I said on the show yesterday, I mean, depending on how things shake out this year, if LeBron wants to go there for the veterans minimum. Everyone has said the game is winning rings. Don't worry about your stats. Don't worry about this. If the game's winning rings, and if the rings are to be had in Golden State, and you can do whatever you want as a free agent, then I'd see no problem with it.
Let me shed a little light on the reporting.
Please.
I was told about a week or two ago, everybody, when LeBron becomes a free agent, everybody will be in play. Teams were mentioned to me. Golden State was mentioned a week or two ago. Boston was mentioned as a possibility. So imagine that, going to join Kyrie Irving. Philadelphia, San Antonio. So LeBron and his group know that if he wants to go anywhere, every team would move heaven and earth to clear the room to get him. So you don't have to just look at who's got the cap room. Okay, that said, I don't think he'll go to Golden State. I think the only way he could even consider seriously going to Golden State would be if they lose in the playoffs. And if they kind of lose ugly, okay? Here's the difference between LeBron. Like, there still are people in the league, and particularly former great players, that hold Miami against him, okay? Fair or unfair, there still is that feeling. If he went to Golden State, let's say if they win the championship, and he goes there, this would show such an absence of competitive spirit and will that I think it would hurt his legacy. Competition, this is different from journalism, television, corporate America. Competition is inherent in sports.
Let me finish. I agree.
If every other sports show went off the air it wouldn't hurt first things first at all. In fact, it would help.
Right.
But it wouldn't change our ability to exist and thrive. If every other fast food restaurant ceased to exist, McDonald's would still be McDonald's.
Listen,
if every other team stops playing basketball, you no longer have a sport.
Right.
So,
But this would turn the NBA into the Harlem Globetrotters.
No,
Tour.
I agree with you. But isn't that what
this is the difference, because you're going to go with Kevin Durant.
Of course.
Kevin Durant went to a team that had one title, not two. Mm-hmm. Kevin Durant went to a team, well, let me put it this way. As talented as Golden State was before Durant, they are way more talented now. So it was one thing to join Steph, Clay, Draymond. It's another thing to join those three plus Kevin Durant. And finally, as great as Durant is, and when it's all said and done, he'll be arguably a top 10 player of all time. He will never and has never been mentioned in the same conversation as Michael Jordan being a GOAT. LeBron is held to a higher expectation and standard because he's arguably the GOAT. That's a difference.
It has a feel of basketball indulgence when you talk about someone like LeBron James going to the Warriors. We saw what it did to Kevin Durant. We don't know if that affected LeBron James in that. What would happen if I did something like that? So I wonder if public perception factors into this at all. Well, he had to have heard what people were saying about the Miami stuff. He knows what people said about Kevin Durant. The fans would go berserk.
But Jenna, I think we're looking at the public perception, the wrong part of public perception. LeBron has been very honest. What is he chasing? The ghost of Michael Jordan.
He won't get it winning 5 rings in Golden State.
Then let's. I may agree with you, but let's drill this down for a moment. I am a man on an island saying we are allowed to evaluate greatest basketball player ever by this crazy metric of who's better at the sport. Not the metric of who has the most rings. I'm the man that is considered nuts for saying, well, LeBron averages more rebounds, more assists, has a better career value over replacement player, better box score plus minus, better shooting percentage, will end up playing longer, will end up with more of everything, therefore the better player. I'm considered crazy for that opinion because everyone's like, no, 6 rings.
That's not the only argument, though.
Well, it's becoming the only argument. The Jordan versus LeBron argument, LeBron's going to have him lapped statistically. The argument's going to be the rings. And if in the midst of his time to win more rings, Chris, one team cheats the system legally in Golden State and makes the mountain to climb to get more rings.
How did they cheat the system?
I said, well, there were a lot of, I said legally, but there were a lot of things that there's the one-off of Steph's contract because of his ankles. Then the one-off of the salary cap spike happening.
Well, that's just, they were fortunate.
Right, sure.
But that's not cheating the system.
No. Now, Draymond calling him throughout the year while they're supposed to be competing, you should come here next year, you should come here next year. Again, it's legal tampering, okay. So whatever you want to call it. But if in the midst of LeBron trying to get those rings, we get the most talented team of all time is formed in front of him. And then the rules are also, listen, if you want to be considered the greatest of all time, you got to get to 6 rings. You're not allowed to join, by the way, a few teams. By the way, when you're a free agent, there's a few teams you can't join, not going to be cool with it. Well, then what are we doing here? Then, like, look, when you're debating the GOAT, you nitpick. It's not just rings. Bill Russell has 11. Mm-hmm. Okay, there are other Boston Celtics who have 10. Sure.
So
Robert Horry's got 7.
Yeah, it's not just rings. That's just an element of it. But LeBron and Michael Jordan, it's how you got the rings. It's who you played against. And I've said LeBron has faced stiffer competition. But what do you think? I don't think you would agree with him going to Golden State.
Do I want LeBron to sign with Golden State? Do I want my favorite sport in the world to become a foregone conclusion? Of course not. Of course I don't want it to happen. But I do, and because I was one of the, I think, few people that owned the criticism of Kevin Durant, I would criticize it. But what I will not abide is people that argued what KD did was totally fine. The competition, people act...
This would be different. Just like, look, LeBron going to Miami was one thing. Mm-hmm. I've said in principle, KD going to Golden State was similar, but it was more egregious
more,
if you want to use it.
More extreme.
This would be even more extreme than what KD did. Yeah, in principle, it'd be similar, but it would be far more extreme. And again, unbecoming of a player that people think may be the best player of all time.
Let me ask you this before we go, real quick. If the way Golden State could, what if, just out of curiosity, if Durant, you said if they lose, what if Durant opts out and leaves?
Oh, well, then maybe it's a different thing.
Then it's a different thing?
Look, if I'm Golden State, I don't even know, like, if I had to give up Clay and
Iggy.
Iggy is getting older. Livingston's getting older. I don't know if I would. Because I would not, if they run through the playoffs again, if they go 16-1, 16-0, 15-2, whatever it is, I would keep my team the way it is. I would keep my team the way. I know what I'm saying.
If it prevents, but it would also, you got to think about if it prevent LeBron from going. But they say we got to go.
They don't need him.
It's just in James Harden is also going to the Golden State Warriors.
Everyone's allowed to.
I mean, come on.
You're a free agent. Sign wherever you want.
Everyone is going to the Golden State Warriors for no money. Finally, what happened to the Cavs last night? They played terribly. That's not news. They struggled on offense. That's not news. They won the game. Hey, that's news. At least lately it is. Cleveland beat Miami 91-89. It was the first time the Cavs held an opponent to under 100 points in a win since December 9th. Nick, how did the Cavs look in their first game without Kevin Love?
Oh, that was ugly. Now, defensively, I don't know if they played great defense or if it was just Miami was missing wide open threes. Like, I need to see what some of the next level, while I'm watching in real time, I can't calculate how many of those are missed open jumpers. Like that Synergy Sports would be able to tell us in a few hours how good their defense really was. When Miami shoots 3 for 28 from 3, is that because they were closing out, or is that just because Miami was off from 3 that night? I mean, there were 143 combined turnovers, free throws, and missed three-pointers in this basketball game. 143. It wasn't a fun game to watch. Now,
you called it what? One of the least fun fun games.
No, it was one of the ugliest games of the NBA season. Now, LeBron was good late. He mentioned after the game he was really sloppy with the ball early. He was good late. Couple key baskets, a key assist to Jay Crowder, and then a stop at the end of the game where Miami doesn't even get a shot off. But the most concerning thing to me is this was maybe Isaiah Thomas's worst game. I mean, he's 2 of 15 from the field. He's now 5 of 25 in his last 2. So, yeah, the Cavs' struggle had been on defense. It looks like they played better defense yesterday. They couldn't hit a shot. But IT was bad once again and doesn't look healthier, doesn't look better.
Well, look, this is a guy that wherever he has been, even before going to Boston, Sacramento, Phoenix, when he'd come off the bench. When he came off the bench, he was the show for those 8 minutes or whatever stints that he would do. In Boston, he was the show. So now it's tougher on a guy like that to adjust to playing with LeBron where you're not the show. It's going to take a while. Here's the thing. You're right about the defense. I'm giving him some credit. But let's not go overboard because Miami did miss a lot of open shots. But here's the thing for the Cavs. 2 points. One, LeBron James is often at his best when the talent around him is not quite as good. His first stint in Cleveland was some of the best basketball of his career. I mean, the accomplishment in 2007 when he lost in the finals.
One of the greatest accomplishments ever.
Carrying that team to the finals through a great Detroit Pistons squad was phenomenal. Golden State 2015 when Kevin Love and Kyrie Irving go down. LeBron, phenomenal. He can do that again with this team. So we will see them win a lot of games.
Because he hasn't in the last couple weeks.
Well, they've had more talent.
He's saying with Kevin Love out.
Yeah,
but I feel like if that's the case, they're prime right now. IT's not playing. Kevin Love's not there. He doesn't have
to do it. He's not going to turn it up to the nth degree because it's regular season.
Yeah.
I'm just saying he can carry a team on his back, particularly when they don't have a lot of time.
One quick note before we get to what LeBron said after the game. I agree with you wholeheartedly about LeBron with role players. Yeah. Those role players have to be hitting threes. Like the Channing Frye yesterday was the second best player on the Cavs. LeBron got 3 consecutive assists on the same play. They were running to Channing Frye, this little curl screen, and then he was hitting Frye for some open threes. In order for LeBron to thrive with lesser talent, the one thing that lesser talent has to be able to do is hit open jump shots.
Well, you got Frye, you got Corver, and what I like, look, and I'm not going to say this is their identity, but a few years ago, their identity was physical, tough play. When they beat Golden State in 2016, they got away from that. They shoot more threes than Golden State does. And this was a game, they still put up a lot of threes, but they had to get more to being physical, focusing in on a little more on defense than trying to just outshoot.
And a slower pace.
Exactly.
A slower pace.
And when LeBron can control tempo better than any other player in the league, they may need to go to play that way normally.
All right, let's stick with the Cavs, but focusing on something interesting LeBron said after the game. He was asked if his role changes without Kevin Love in the lineup, and his answer may surprise you. Take a listen to this.
I just do me. I average 9 rebounds, so, I don't have to do more than that. I picked up 2 more, tonight, but, I'm going to just do me, and, obviously don't like the way I shot it today, don't like the way I handled the ball in the first half with the turnovers, but in the second half I was pretty solid with the ball, pretty solid with my rebound, and got my guys, in some rhythm, some good things. So, my job doesn't change no matter who's in or out of the lineup.
All right, what was your reaction to what LeBron had to say, Nick?
I think this was a shot across the bow, if you will, or a signal to whomever the hell is running the Cavs right now. Is it Kobe Altman or Dan Gilbert? I'm not entirely certain. There was a Bleacher Report article by Ken Berger, another journalist I respect a lot, who said Dan Gilbert's doing what he wants. He's running the team. That seems disastrous, but it is what it is. Letting these guys know, if your plan is with the deadline 8 days away, that, oh, don't worry, I got this for these 6 weeks without Kevin Love, that shouldn't be your plan. Like, I'm not going to take it off, but the idea that LeBron's going to activate playoff LeBron, what you were talking about, that level of intensity, that level of effort. And why doesn't he do that at all times? Because you only have so much energy in the human body. And he is pacing himself, as he has every year, to peak in the postseason. The idea that he's going to activate that early, I think he's telling them, no, I'm not. Like, guess what? You've been getting 27, 8, and 9 from me.
Yep.
You're going to continue to get 27, 8, and 9 from me. The other guys or the front office needs to figure out how to make that enough.
I also thought yesterday LeBron put out an Instagram post, said when you're lazy, you're disrespecting those that count on you.
That have faith in you.
Yeah, exactly. Who knows who he's talking about? It could be somebody in the Cavs organization, some group of people, or it could be totally unrelated.
It could be talking about himself. It was just saying,
exactly.
That's why I'm not lazy, whatever.
But if I had to pick someone or some group in the Cavs that it's focused on, I would agree with you. I think that's the front office. I think he would be sending a message like, look, you're not beating the bushes as hard as you should be before the trade deadline to make some move, find some move that's going to get us to the level we can compete with Golden State. So you're being lazy in that regard. That's how I would take that. On the other hand, I would say this. LeBron was being accurate, too. LeBron James is always the dominant figure on his team wherever he's at. So what he does doesn't change. He doesn't have to ratchet it up. He'll play better because there are more opportunities, as I said earlier. But the guys that need to say, I need to step up and should be excited about it are Isaiah Thomas, Jay Crowder, Jeff Green, so on and so forth. Because guess what? There's more shots for you. And that should get any player excited. LeBron's getting his shots no matter who's there. So there's some accuracy into what he said, too.
This is the greatest player in our generation right now. We've been watching. Why doesn't he have more influence with the front office? Why doesn't a guy like LeBron James, who every single team will fight to the death to get next season, why can't he walk in there and say, this is what I want, this is what I need? Because we talk about what.
Yeah, because he won't sign that contract extension. Number one, he does have influence. I mean, look, he does. He can't force them to do whatever he wants.
But he doesn't have to do it on Instagram.
No,
I feel like they've got
even over the years when LeBron's been aware of every move and gave his, signed off on every move. He's never sitting in there with the front office discussing things.
Sure.
It gets to him. They relay it through guys to LeBron, and then he'll deal with it.
The difference was in years past, they had a seasoned GM in David Griffin, who was really good at his job. And now they have Kobe Altman, who's learning on the fly, and Dan Gilbert, who evidently wants to play fantasy GM. And they got 7 days. Jenna, you've been asking me, and I know we got to go. You've been asking me all year when I'll be concerned about the Cavs. If in 7 days they have the exact same roster they have right now,
a significant move.
Something to change the hierarchy.
Dynamic.
Yep. Thank you, CB.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to First Things First, alongside the Hall of Famer Nick Wright. That is Coach Eric Mangini. I am Jenna Wolfe. Things are shifting because our guy, Chris Carter, is in Minneapolis, site of Super Bowl 52. He'll be joining us in a little bit, in about an hour or so.
Yep.
But you've filling in.
Coach sitting in for the time being. Good to see you, Coach.
Handshake is off, and
Yeah, the whole thing. We're still going right-handed, though. It's just this is how it used to be back when I sat over here.
I know, but
back when it used to be awkward. Now it's totally not awkward anymore.
We've made it awkward again.
Of course we did. We talked about it.
So we've got CeCe comes up in an hour.
Yes.
In about a half hour, Chris Broussard's here because something that I said on the air yesterday that everyone laughed at. They're like, "Oh, where could LeBron go?" I said Golden State. Everyone's like, "Oh, he can't do that." Well, turns
He's
out
not going to Golden State.
But LeBron is considering Golden State, so we'll get to that. But I think we'll start with some football.
If you're here, maybe we'll do that. You want to do that?
Or you want to do LeBron?
Would you rather talk
Golden
LeBron
State?
Golden State?
I don't think he can leave Cleveland.
Okay, well, we got to the bottom of that.
Right, oh, yeah.
LeBron, you got to stay. Luke would be way too upset.
Okay, good.
And that buttons that topic up.
Right.
Now we'll
That's
do
it.
football. Okay. All right. Let us start with the New England Patriots. Tom Brady preparing for his 8th Super Bowl at 40 years of age. Lately, his name has become synonymous with retirement questions because in football, 40 is old. In life, 40 is the new 27. Yesterday, Patriots President Jonathan Kraft said Brady, quote, has earned the right to decide when his career is over. It's a sharp turn from the Patriot way, if you will. Tom Brady was asked when he would eventually hang it up, and he seemed a bit tired of the question. Take a listen.
Why does everyone want me to retire so bad? I don't get it. I'm having fun. The team's doing good. You know, I know I'm a little bit older than most of the other guys, but, you know, I'm really enjoying it. I obviously enjoy the experience of playing in this game. This has been, I mean, obviously a dream come true, you know, many times over. And, you know, it takes a lot of hard work to get here. And our team, I think, is, you know, working hard. We had a good practice today. We're going to need a couple more good ones. We're playing against, you know, great football teams. So I'm not thinking about retirement. I'm thinking about the Super Bowl and trying to win the most important game of the year. And it's going to take a lot to do it.
So the good news is Tom Brady has practiced answering that question because it is a question he has gotten and will get until he stops playing. But, Nick, I'll start with you. Does letting Tom Brady decide his future go against the proverbial Patriot way, if you will?
Saying that any player gets to decide when he's done playing for the Patriots, of course it runs counter to the program and the culture they've installed the better part of the last 2 decades. It doesn't mean it's bad. It doesn't mean it's the wrong thing, but does it run counter to the way they've run that operation where Bill Belichick famously, coldly and calculatedly, again, not necessarily a bad thing, decides when even if you can still play, when your price exceeds your value to the team or when it is better for the long-term health of the team to maybe take a slight step back at a position in order to get younger at a position. That's been the way they've run this thing. You can ask Lawyer Malloy. And I bring up Lawyer Malloy because he was famously cut weeks before the start of a season to then go to Buffalo. I think beat the Patriots badly week 1 that year. You can ask. You were there for that one? I apologize.
Yeah,
I wasn't trying to.
He did it. He actually cut him.
30-0 won the Super Bowl.
Okay, yeah, no, I understand you guys ended up crushing them later in the year. But you can ask Richard Seymour, who was in the prime of his career and traded to Oakland for 2 first-round picks when he still had a lot of good football left. There's a long list of guys. This does run counter to what has been done in the past, and I would not dismiss the messenger here. Jonathan Kraft, I know Bob Kraft is the owner, but as we see in a lot of industries and a lot of companies, when the owner, the patriarch of an organization, gets older, and the son, who's clearly the heir apparent, starts taking on more of a leading role, his word should be taken seriously. You see a similar thing in Houston. Bob McNair's the owner of the team, but Cal McNair, the son, is the one you hear from more often. So I do believe it runs counter to the Patriot way. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, but I don't know how Bill Belichick feels about that because the Patriot way essentially is the Belichick way.
And look, no disrespect to Lawyer Malloy or Richard Seymour. I love both those guys, and they were huge parts of our success. But there is no Patriot way, without Tom Brady. We're not even talking about a system without Tom and the success that he's brought to it. And yesterday when Alex Smith got traded and got the contract that he got at 34 years old, to me, that whole dynamic has changed because Tom Brady has changed the discussion in terms of how long you can go and how long you can be effective. And with Tom, there's nothing that would surprise me in terms of his continued ability to be successful. Now, all that being said, I think if he goes out and plays poorly on a consistent basis, that leash will shorten pretty dramatically, and you'll probably get to a point where everybody agrees that it's time to move on. So I think that I understand it, but it may be a little bit of a grain of salt here.
You say the leash would shorten. The leash might shorten by the coaching staff. It seems to me that the people, like the quote you told us, that if you want to pick the plays, coach a team, and if you want to pick the coaches, own a team. I'm butchering it, but do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
That you were told once, basically, if you want to make decisions higher than the level of the coach, go buy yourself a football team. Belichick has a ton of power, but he doesn't have more power than the people with the last name Kraft. And if those people have said that, listen, Tom Brady gets to play for us as long as he wants to play for us, that seems to extend the leash as long as he wants it extended.
Well, when you look at what happened this year, there's a lot of things that point in that direction. When they move on from Jimmy Garoppolo at the point that they do, in the way that they do, it does reinforce that Tom has the ability to play as long as he can. But when you've had this much success for this long, if suddenly it transitions to 5-11, 4-12, things change. The way you view the world changes. They're at the Super Bowl this week. It's about as euphoric.
So it was almost like a euphoric reaction to someone asking a question.
Yeah, and this whole discussion will change dramatically in a 4 or 5 game losing streak if he's being really ineffective and looks like age is caught up with him.
Nick and I discussed this earlier, and we sort of differed on this point. Do you think this same generous extension would have been offered last year before the Super Bowl? Would they have said the same thing about Tom Brady? Nick seems to think that they only say this year because basically of what happened at the Super Bowl.
I think that I want to be very clear. I think that if the 28-3 stays 28-3 and they lose that game, and Brady had played poorly in the first round of the playoffs that year, their first playoff game, and had played poorly in the Super Bowl up to that point, then I think everything's different with the Patriots this year. I think they don't trade Jimmy Garoppolo. I think this conversation's not happening, even if they're back in the Super Bowl right now. I think the moment Tom Brady became from greatest quarterback of all time to godlike figure was the fourth quarter of the Super Bowl last year. That, to me, was the tipping point to where he became more powerful, if you will, within the organization than Belichick, and has more of a sway than he had ever before.
I don't know about that. I feel like this has been in the weeds for a long time. We're only hearing about it because of everything that came up this year. We wouldn't have had to hear about what Bob Kraft thinks about Tom Brady or where Belichick stands in this three-headed monster, if you will, of the Patriots because of all this other stuff that came up. I think they have been into this Tom Brady being able to retire when he wants to retire, at least for the last few years.
Yeah,
especially with what you said, what he's done for the organization.
What he's done for the organization, the relationship that he has with the family. But just think about what you just said. If he had played poorly or continued to play poorly in the Super Bowl, we wouldn't be having this discussion. So does that mean if he goes out and plays really poorly in this Super Bowl, suddenly the conversation changes moving into next season? I think everybody is waiting to find the crack in Tom Brady's armor. And when they do, they can all say, okay, they should have kept Garoppolo. Why is he still there? The people are looking for that, and Tom continues to defy odds, and the Crafts are betting that he'll follow that same path.
Again, I want to make this part clear. Brady very well may have earned this supreme level of deference. I believe he's the greatest football player ever. But the other players that are in the discussion for greatest football player ever did not earn this level of deference. Joe Montana had to go play for a different team. Jerry Rice had to go play for a different team. Jim Brown, who was up to that point in time the greatest football player ever, didn't even want to go play for a different team. Wanted to keep playing, said, I just want to make movies as well. And his owner said, pick. You don't get to do both. Emmitt Smith had to go play for a different team. Peyton Manning did not want to leave the Indianapolis Colts. He had to go play for a different team. I just listed 5 of the 10 greatest offensive football players of all time, a list that Brady's at the top of, but those are his contemporaries. Those guys didn't earn this level of deference.
But if their owners had been interviewed the 2 or 3 days before the Super Bowl, they probably would have said, of course they have every opportunity to play as long as they want. I think it's timing, and look, this can change pretty dramatically with, a little bit of a losing streak.
Nick Foles and head coach Doug Pederson are preparing to face the Goliath of the Patriots. No big deal. You just have to beat a team that's won 2 of the last 3 Super Bowls. And even if you get a 25-point lead on them, assume no lead is safe. Why is that so hard? Coach Pederson was asked about his game plan to attack this New England defense.
I approach each game the same. I'm gonna try to stay as aggressive as possible. Be smart, put our players in successful positions, and try to maintain that. So, I hope this game doesn't change that.
All right, Coach, let's break this down a little bit. We're talking about this Eagles offense going up against the Patriots defense and how many problems they can cause for a Patriots defense that really started off the season slow and built itself into sort of a formidable unit.
Yeah, when you look at the New England defense, it's rule-based. And what I mean by that is everybody has a role to play. There's a lot of communication that goes into getting into the right spots. And one of the things that happened early in the season, especially with the Kansas City game, is teams were attacking that rule-based defense. They were forcing communication, and the guys weren't on the same page, and they were cutting players free. And if we go to the tape from last week, I can show you examples of what Philadelphia does well and how they can put pressure. So in this first example here, they start with a wide receiver in the backfield. So Alshon Jeffery's in the backfield. So that creates one set of communication, and it's a gadget formation. So 11 guys have to talk. Now they shift out to another meaningful formation. It's a bunch. Alshon Jeffery is there. A second set of communication has to take place. Those 11 guys have to talk again. Now they motion, and they motion to a double stack. 2 receivers next to each other on the left, 2 receivers on the right. It's another problem formation and another set of communication. So we're talking about 33 different things that have to happen right. And this is what Philly wants. Now they create spacing. Nobody gets jammed. The timing isn't disrupted. Nick Foles is able to come back, throw the ball quickly, and you'll see it as nobody touches any of these receivers. There's multiple options. They get what they want. They have timing, they have spacing, they have a quick release, and to me, that's a really, really effective way to attack New England.
And when you watch that, what you realize also is the Vikings in that spot could have had 4 separate Lawrence Taylor clones lining up on the D-line. And it wouldn't matter because it comes
out so quick.
It comes out so quick. So there's all that stuff before the snap to try to get some confusion, to try to get a window. And Foles is making that decision immediately. Sees it like it's college style. It's just catch, go.
And a lot of times what you want to do to disrupt timing is you get up and you play man-to-man and you get in somebody's face. But each one of those formations, you had a wide receiver in the backfield. Okay, that takes a bunch of adjustments from the secondary. Then you go to a bunch set. That takes a bunch of adjustments from the secondary. Then you motion over to another double stack sec. Coach in the secondary, that's a difficult job getting all those guys on the same page for all 3 of those looks.
I would imagine if you're seeing this, Belichick is seeing this. Tell me how the Patriots go ahead and tackle that.
Well, what you have to do is you have to have a mix of man-to-man and zone defense. And zone allows everybody to stay in one place. And nobody moves, nobody gets hurt. You go up, you disrupt it. Now, the problem with playing a ton of zone is that there are gaps in the zone. There is spacing in the zone. So you want to be able to mix it in, and you want everything to look the same so that Foles has to come back and figure out, okay, is this truly a cover 2 zone? Is it a cover 3 zone? It's that pre-snap disguise, again, that's so important to force quarterbacks to make decisions after they have the ball in their hand.
And there was a play that CC broke down early in the year. You mentioned Kansas City ran it. That Kansas City ran on the Patriots where they had misdirection between Kareem Hunt and Tyreek Hill, and it ended with Kareem Hunt coming out of the backfield, running up the seam wide open. That was then used repeatedly the first few weeks of the year. There was another play we broke down, I remember, against New England, the Carolina Panthers ran with Christian McCaffrey coming in motion. There was one piece of miscommunication. We thought it was Stephon Gilmore that didn't know where to be. It was early in his time there. And he runs untouched, wide open. Cam could have handed him the ball 20 yards downfield. That is the type of thing, though, the Patriots seem to have cleaned up later in the year by going to more zone and by having guys get more comfortable with the communication with their roles.
Well, that's going to happen, and you're hoping you make that progress. But even when we played the Rams in the first Super Bowl, the greatest show on turf, there were a ton of gadget formations, and it took so much time and effort and repetition to try to be able to deal with the volume. And you get to the point with guys where it's multiples of multiples, and you start to simplify the defense to take that pressure off. And then you add to the fact that you've got the pressure of the game, the anxiety, all those things that go into it, and it's a balancing act. You want to have enough to attack, but not too much to overwhelm the guys.
You mentioned something the Chiefs did. One thing CeCe has mentioned a bunch in the week leading up to the game is the Doug Pederson-Andy Reid relationship. So Doug Pederson was obviously with Andy Reid in Philly, but then most notably was the offensive coordinator for the Chiefs until he came over to be the head coach for the Eagles last year. Do you buy into that Andy Reid can be almost an unpaid consultant for the Eagles this week if Doug Pederson, are there things Doug Pederson can pick from Andy Reid's brain about his success against the Patriots?
Yeah, you can definitely do that. And in a situation like this, you'll take feedback and information from anybody that's willing to offer it. Now, whether he's going to be able to give
most other people.
Well,
you're not on the speed dial.
Because I've written him so many times, I've gotten nothing back in return, but they're just suggestions.
I think he wants to wait till the end of the week. And
I was too soon?
Yeah, really.
I jumped the gun. I knew
give you a chance to digest everything.
Got it. Rule-based.
Step out for rule-based. So you can to some degree, but the team has changed, and the understanding of your player strengths and the things that you do, you've got the best perspective on it. But concept-wise, there's some things that you could talk about. I
just want to ask you about Nick Foles, because you talk about reading defenses, and we know nobody's better at it than Tom Brady. But now you have a guy who's not only making, one of his first starts ever, really, in the Super Bowl, where there's 1,000 different distractions, and you're asking that guy to go out there, keep a level head, and read defenses in a fraction of a second. How difficult is that, and where does experience play?
Well, it's really difficult. But what they're doing formationally and what they're trying to do from an attacking standpoint is limit what he has to read. So by shifting and motioning and forming these gadget formations,
the offensive, you're
putting the pressure back on the defense, which hopefully then simplifies it, which then allows Nick to come back, not have that timing, not have that spacing disrupted, and come out with quick decisions. If he has to hold the ball, there's going to be a lot of problems for that offense. If New England's able to disrupt it, and he's got to go to a second and third read, they're going to have huge issues.
Well, and that's one of the things that he has helped his success in the playoffs. In the regular season, in his brief starts this season in the regular season, he was holding onto the ball for more than 2 seconds nearly 80% of the time. In the playoffs, it's been about 60% of the time. So almost 40% of the time he's been getting the ball out in less than 2 seconds. And the experience factor, Nick Foles is a backup, but he's a backup who once upon a time was a starter. So he's started as many games for the Eagles as Carson Wentz has in his career, and that's not even counting what he did with the Rams. There's one other quick point I want to ask you about. We always hear about the Patriots taking away what you do best. That's their idea. When they're playing a team that doesn't have one star player, that doesn't have one guy, we've got to take away player X. Can that almost, whose advantage does that lean into? You would think, Pats would rather not have to deal with one-star guy. Or does it work for Philly in that there's not one person they can key on for us because we've been such a diversified offense all year?
Well, look, you'd always want to have a star player, someone that can affect the game. And what a star player usually does is at least it gives you some certainty as to where New England is going to push the coverage. You can reasonably anticipate it's going to go to this spot or to that spot. So when it's more evenly distributed, you got to figure out, okay, what are they going to try to take away? To me, it's got to be disrupting that spacing in the passing game. It's got to be forcing Foles to hold onto the ball and see what he can do trying to make plays. And look, he got hit, and he's gotten hit when he's held the ball quite a bit. They're not too far away from that second quarterback.
Right. It is Thursday, And the Gronk watch continues. Rob Gronkowski is still in concussion protocol 3 days before the Super Bowl. He did practice on a limited basis yesterday, and he did assure reporters that he would play on Sunday. But, Nick, is it time to consider alternate game plans should he be unavailable? And have the Patriots basically already started doing that?
Well, I'm sure they have. They've got a lot of contingencies in place for almost anyone, but particularly a player who's in the concussion protocol such as Gronk. But I do want to let America know, like, Gronk is, of all the non-quarterbacks in the sport, Gronk might be the single most impactful. He, Julio Jones, maybe you'd include Von Miller. Like, he is on the very short list of non-quarterbacks that could be ruled out for a game and move the point spread by a point, which most players can't do. And what he does for Tom Brady. In the playoffs over the last 4 years, CC, when Gronk's on the field, Brady gets the ball out of his hands in less than 2.4 seconds. That's an elite timing. When Gronk's not on the field, Brady is exactly league average on how long he holds on to the football. For a team with the pass rush that Philadelphia has, even plays Gronk doesn't catch the football, he's wildly impactful. If he's not able to play, that is an enormous loss for New England.
It's a huge loss, Nick. You bring up some good points, especially as far as Brady and how much he likes Gronk. Gronk is the best tight end in football. He's one of 2 tight ends that had over 1,000 yards this season, him and Kelsey with Kansas City. He's one of the best tight ends that we've seen in the NFL, in quite some years. He's a special player. He's also special not only because he's a wide receiver, but he can get deep down the field. He's also a dynamic red zone receiver. He's their best receiver in the red zone because he's the only one that has a mismatch and can play outside or play inside. Tom loves throwing to big guys. I told you guys about the conversation that I had with Tom, and he wishes New England had more big receivers. But the thing where New England is going to missing is the end of the line blocking. Like, people don't realize what a great blocker he is. So if Gronk is not full speed, and because he's missed all this time and he's still limited and it's Thursday at the Super Bowl, watch to see if Gronk gets hit in the game if he gets dinged, because he would be easy to be pulled out of this game, especially how long he's been in the protocol. So that's something I'm going to watch. Whose roles change if Gronk can't play? Now, we know New England has a plan B, a plan C, and a plan D or E if they have to go to it. But Dion Lewis, former Philadelphia Eagles, no success there. Watch him coming out of the backfield matched up against the Eagles linebackers. Brandon Cooks, the receiver, the biggest pickup they had this offseason from New Orleans. Him and Tom Brady are in sync. You can see the momentum he's created in the playoffs. And also, look for Tom to throw the ball deep to Brandon Cook, at least 3 or 4 big shots down the field. So Dion Lewis, Brandon Cooks, these guys, if Gronk is out of the game or if he's limited, they play a bigger role, Nick, in how the Patriots try to get it done.
And I'll ask this to both of you guys. How does this affect, you mentioned it, you touched upon it, this is someone that Tom feels so comfortable with, and he goes his go-to guy, especially when he knows he needs yards. Without him in there, does that affect Tom Brady any more than just, it would have been nice to have him? I mean, does that impact him in a bigger way?
It affects him. He adjusts. It does affect him, though, because anytime you lose a great player, it's hard to replace that productivity. But what Tom will do, he will go to his plan B, and that's typically going to one of his slot receivers. We know all along, Julian Edelman, that's his favorite guy. It's probably his favorite Patriot right now on the team. He's not playing. Danny Amendola comes up big like he did in AFC Championship game. If Gronk is not available, Amendola, he can only play in the slot. As a wide receiver, he cannot play outside. He's too slow and he's too small. So he comes into the slot and becomes the primary target in the Patriots offense, replacing some of that productivity that Gronk gave them.
Well, and the other aspect that Gronk, and you've talked about this a lot, and it cannot be overstated in a game against a team with as good of a defensive line as the Eagles have, which is what Gronk does for you in the running game. This year in games with Gronk, the Patriots are averaging nearly 120 yards per game rushing. Without him, they're under 70. Now, it's a very small sample size, but it's still noteworthy. We have talked about the physical advantages, the Eagles defensive line has on the Patriots offensive line. One of the ways they can neutralize that in the running game is by putting the man that you called their best offensive lineman, Rob Gronkowski, out on the edge. I mean, great job by our production staff here showing all these times where Gronk is the best player on the field where he doesn't touch the football, where he's out there clearing a path for his running backs who, while the Patriots have a good stable of running backs, they don't have one super elite player that's going to create his own holes that just needs one little seam and he's going to go 40 yards. Gronk's been outstanding for them in that. So that is his level of impact as any great player, but also a guy who is on the short list of best ever at his position, is felt throughout the entire game plan. And we said yesterday that we would not be worried about Gronk not playing in this game unless he was not practicing by today. So he was limited yesterday. I am very curious to see when the Patriots practice today, what is Gronk's participation? Because if he is not a full participant today, we have to start talking about this game, keeping in mind Gronk might not be playing in it.
Right. One thing, too, we talked about the Patriot way before and how the Patriots have kind of gone a little bit off that with Tom Brady. One thing that's not noted a lot, Nick, you and I talk about it. Gronk, the Patriots treat him different. They let Gronk have more fun. Gronk does things to be able to energize the crowd and his teammates like only maybe Tom Brady can do. So let's not forget the big plays and the emotion that Gronk would bring in a big game like this, the Super Bowl. You miss that. He's kind of the wide receiver, kind of the Pied Piper for the Patriots because Belichick and them, they let him have some fun on the field.
On to the NFL.
It's a bad idea.
Now that Alex Smith is out, Patrick Mahomes is the guy in KC. Tight end Travis Kelce says they can win with Mahomes. Nick, how excited are you for the Mahomes era?
Man, I just asked if people heard at the end of the last segment, I asked CC to make a late addition to the Hall of Fame nominees, one Patrick Mahomes. Now, I know he's only played in part of one regular season game in his career, but I saw enough.
Think about what you just said,
I'm so
Nick.
excited. I just want people to know the last quarterback the Chiefs drafted to win a game for the Chiefs was Todd Blackledge. He was drafted in 1983, a guy they drafted instead of, Dan Marino. But regardless, I'm very excited. Maybe it's over-optimism, but I'm very excited for the Pat Mahomes era. I just wish it had started around Thanksgiving. Maybe the Chiefs would be playing in this game if it had.
Well, just let America know who Pat Mahomes is. He's a lot like Brett Favre. He's got a big-time arm. He's going to play in the pocket, out of the pocket. He's a good athlete. He can run, but he is a pocket passer. I think people will be surprised when him and Andy Reid hook up in year number 2 of his overall arm talent and his skill to be able to distribute the football. Let's not forget, he's in one of the best situations with a coach and all the skilled players that he has around him. Man, he's got speed. He's got Kelce at a tight end. He's got a great running back in Kareem Hunt. So he's got great personnel around him.
Right, and he's devastatingly handsome.
Speaking of quarterbacks, Kirk Cousins is now looking for a new home. Broncos defensive end Von Miller said yesterday, "We need Kirk. I would like to have Kirk. We have great quarterbacks now. Kirk could take us over the edge." CC, would Kirk Cousins be a good fit in Denver?
I mean, he would be a vast improvement over everything they've had there except Peyton Manning. I mean, Peyton Manning fell into their lap after being injured, a couple surgeries coming from the Colts. Man, Kirk can throw the ball. But you got to be careful when defensive players start vying for quarterbacks and everything because those other quarterbacks on the roster, what if they don't get Kirk Cousins?
Yeah.
Now Von Miller in that locker room could be a little bit in turmoil. But John Elway, man, get you a veteran. Stop trying to develop quarterbacks, John, okay? Now, you were a great quarterback, but everyone's not good at developing them. Go out and get a proven guy.
Man, Von Miller wishes Paxton Lynch and his unconnected goatee stepped to him in the locker room. I heard you wanted Kirk Cousins. You know how you don't want to be the guy that follows the guy? You always want to be the guy that follows Lynch Osweiler Simeon. No matter who you are a vast improvement. I don't think Kirk Cousins is a top 6 quarterback in the league, but all he has to be is top 26 to be a big improvement on what they have in Denver. That's a team with a good defense, potentially very good defense, still has one wide receiver that I like a lot in Emmanuel Sanders. If they get quality quarterback play, they're a dangerous team.
Later, can we talk
agree.
about the unconnected beard?
Yeah, he just used facial hair. It's something I can empathize with to a degree.
And finally, the catch rule has been on the minds of fans and players alike all season long, and now the commissioner says it is time to consider changes. Roger Goodell spoke about how the rule will be tweaked in the future.
There are a lot of people who have different perspectives on that. There was a lot of disagreement in the room what a catch and what a catch wasn't. And so people with great football experience can disagree on that. As an example, I've said this before, but Chris Carter believes that you should make a catch, you should stand up and you hand it to the referee. And if you don't do that, it's not a catch. And I admire and respect him a great deal. But there are others who have a view, if you get possession of it and you get that second foot down, it's immediately a catch. So I think intelligent and thoughtful and people who have great football experience can disagree on what a catch is or what a catch isn't.
CeCe, were you the Chris Carter that he was referring to there? Hall of Fame, wide receiver in a meeting with Roger Goodell. That was you, right?
That was me, but not necessarily the way you want your name mentioned. I appreciate Roger. I'm going to bump in him later on today. But also what I read from what Roger was saying, Chris Carter not going to get his way. I believe that the catch rule will be changed. I believe that they're really concerned about the fan and their inability to understand. And we don't want to lose fans to the game. And we don't want to take away spectacular, dynamic plays away from the game of football. So I believe that the rule will be changed. I believe as far as going to the ground and the overall terminology as far as surviving the ground, they will make an adjustment on that. But I'm all for helping the fans out. I'm all for a better interpretation. What I'm not for is making the game easier. So that most of my debate with Bill Cowher and Kellen Winslow and other great players who all made great points. And Roger mentioned that, like, we disagreed, but we realized that the fans and the players playing the game, they're the most important. So we're going to try to accommodate the current players and try to accommodate our fan base so they get a better understanding and we don't have these Monday morning quarterbacks with all these disputes that we've had in the last several years.
First of all, I would like to thank your friend Roger Goodell for making the point that I so desperately and failingly tried to make the day after the Jesse James catch, which is intelligent football people can disagree on this. Chris Carter's standard of what is a catch is, the standard of the man who claims, or I shouldn't say claims, the man who might have the greatest hands in NFL history. You want him to be able to autograph the football, hand it to the refs, shine it on, the whole thing. Other people might think, I feel like what Jesse James did was a catch. The fact of the matter is, it does look like they are going to make it at least slightly easier for players for it to be considered a catch. Now, I will agree with you. I don't think it should ever become where it's easier to make a catch in the NFL than college. But they could make it easier than it currently is.
Nick, if you remove the ground part, which now you're on the level with the CFL, even though you only have 1 foot in CFL, 1 foot in college, it becomes incrementally easier to catch the ball in pro football than it is now. Now, the rules in football haven't changed in the last 20 years. Since Bert Emanuel made the catch in the playoff game with Tampa Bay, they changed as far as the ball could move as long as you had control, because that play was not allowed in the playoff game. The next year, they changed it. So the rules haven't changed. It's just people's interpretation. And, Nick, technology has hurt the catch rule because now you can slow it down so many frames that the people at home can see more things than they've ever seen before. So that right there, it leads to us trying to maybe tinker with it just a little bit to make it better.
The super slow motion frame by frame has been something, an unintended consequence of replay in all sports that the leagues need to address. I do want to give the NFL credit on something, though. This was something all year long, rightly or wrongly, fans complained about. And as soon as they could address it, I mean, it was 2 weeks ago you were at this meeting. So the playoffs are just barely underway. They're having a meeting. They are discussing it. They are bringing in experts. I give the NFL credit in that because it is something fans want adjusted, and the NFL seems to be at least open to that, if not listening to that.
Well, you have to give credit to two people. Jenna, one of your friends, Troy Vincent, who's over game day operations, and Roger Goodell. Because I'm going to tell you, Nick, I'm pretty good at these debates. I was firing at Roger. Man, I was firing everything. Roger wants the rule changed. He's been a fan of the NFL for 40 years. He wants the rule changed. Now, I'm still punching. I'm still hanging in there. But I think the commissioner's going to win this one.
All right, CC. Well, the Super Bowl isn't the only big line on the NFL's agenda this weekend. The Pro Football Hall of Fame class will be announced Saturday night. Headlining the 15 finalists include friend of show Ray Lewis and CC's old teammate Randy Moss. So, CC, first of all, tell us a little bit about what these players are going through just days before the names are announced. I imagine it is completely nerve-wracking. And then tell us how Saturday will play out.
It is a nerve-wracking time because as an athlete, you don't have any control. Everything, all of your stats are on a piece of paper, and now you have these men and women who are sitting in a room, and they're going to judge your career. It is the ultimate compliment of a player. It is the answer to all questions. Well, how good was that player? In 98 years of playing, we got 310 guys in the hall. We're probably going to put 7 more in on Saturday. It lets you know how good guys are. But for me, there's always some type of hang-up. There's always something that we don't know about. And wide receivers have the toughest time in getting into the Hall of Fame. So now with T.O. up for his 3rd year, Randy Moss on the ballot his 1st year, there's a lot of anxiety. Even Ray Lewis, my good friend, he's not 100% comfortable with, man, am I going to make it? Now, he's definitely going to get in, but all the greats of the past, until they call your name, man, the nerves, the anxiety, how it changes your life, like this is a big moment. And I just hate when that moment is delayed. I hate when people say, well, he'll eventually get in. I believe in giving people their flowers when they're above the ground, not when they're at some type of memorial service for them. So it's going to be highly contested. And I believe that there are going to be some upsets. I don't believe this is a foregone conclusion. Randy Moss, and from some of the things that I'm hearing with the wide receivers, like I'm worried about Moss.
CC, I'm worried. Like
no,
that
I'm worried.
It's weird for me to say I'm concerned when this is the guy you played with one of your good friends. But we joke about this. But given my age, because I was born in 1984. Some of my fondest sports memories are what we're seeing right now. These Moss plays. I was too young to really enjoy Bo Jackson. And it's not a comment on who the best wide receiver is, but just oh my God, how is a human being doing these things? That's what Randy evoked from me. And the more that I listen to people that either have a vote or seem to have the ear of people who have votes, they don't look at Randy that way. And you mentioned before that the way Ray Lewis could be presented is Ray Lewis, Baltimore Ravens, middle linebacker, this year to this year, and then sit down because there will be no debate with Ray. I agree there should be no debate with Ray. There does not need to be a debate with Randy. And he's top 3 all time in yards and touchdowns. What more could you ask? But because of what they did to you, because of what they've done to T.O., I am truly concerned that one of the big stories, the biggest story coming out of this weekend, that is not who won the Super Bowl, I'm worried it's going to be people saying, oh, my God, Randy Moss is not yet a Hall of Famer. And I think it would be a miscarriage of justice. But I think the fans need to recognize I'm not just saying this based on a gut feeling. I have good reason to believe that right now Randy is being looked at as a borderline case. I think it's insane.
Well, Nick, I think, and I know you're a guy with list. So I just quickly came up with the list. Over the last 40 years in the National Football League, I believe there were 5 wide receivers who should have been first ballot Hall of Famers. Number 1, of course, being Jerry Rice. Number 2, Michael Irvin, the playmaker with Dallas Cowboys with 3 championships. They held against him whatever they wanted to hold against him to keep him out. Terrell Owens should be in the Hall of Fame as a first ballot, given the numbers. But now they came up with some criteria that now the locker room is an extension of the playing field, and we had never, ever heard that before. Randy Moss is a first ballot Hall of Famer, and I'm not going to be ashamed to say it. With the numbers that I put up, I should have been a first ballot Hall of Famer. So we have seen this. I waited. Michael Irvin waited. T.O. is still waiting. Man, I'm praying for Randy. I'm working the phones. I'm calling people, but it's going to be tight. I mean, it's going to be a long, contested battle. And the people who have voted for Terrell Owens, do they decide not to vote for Randy Moss because of what happened to T.O.? Now, that happened to myself. It happened to Tim Brown and happened to Andre Reed. Now, eventually, all 3 of us end up getting in. But it does hold up when you have other wide receivers or other positional players on the list. Now, who do I think gets in this year? Ray Lewis definitely gets in. Now, the people who I think have a great possibility, Brian Urlacher, Brian Dawkins, Randy Moss, T.O., and they might put in one offensive lineman. If there's a wild card, in his last year as a Hall of Fame on the ballot, 20 years, the great Everson Walls, great cornerback with the Dallas Cowboys, came into the NFL as a rookie, as a free agent, and led the NFL in interceptions. It's his last year of eligibility. I believe that he gets in, gets that one vote that puts him over the top. So that's my list, Nick. You know I don't do lists.
I love lists.
You've had an influence on me.
Wait, Cece, could you just explain for people that are kind of catching up now, why is it so hard for a wide receiver to get into the Hall, and how much do all the off the field, whatever you want to call it, the antics,
yes,
the verbiage, anything, the distractions, how much does that play into this decision?
Well, Jenna, it plays a lot into the decision, and I can't pinpoint it. It's not like you can be in the room. A lot of the information is held under secrecy, so you don't know necessarily the arguments. The problem with the players, it's not like T.O. had a bad year last year. It's not like Randy, last year, man, he didn't get the 1,200 yards that we're used to him seeing. Right. The players can't do anything about it. But these writers, they do have situations where they do play favorites. They are humans. And I don't understand the system. I respect the system being a Hall of Famer, but there are glitches. It's not a perfect system. But T.O. should have gotten in and should be in. And the question is, do him and Randy go in with Ray Lewis, which I believe is going to be an amazing class.
And I want to make one thing clear, because you mentioned Brian Urlacher. Brian Urlacher's on the ballot for the first time. Brian Urlacher is a Hall of Famer. I would put him in without question. But if Brian Urlacher, if these 50 voters determine that Brian Urlacher is more deserving to go in on the first ballot than Randy Moss, then I do not know what NFL they watched the last 20 years. Brian Urlacher is an all-time great player and should be in there. But the idea that Brian Urlacher...
But he was not Randy Moss.
But exactly right. The idea that Brian Urlacher, who, by the way, also got to one Super Bowl, did not win it, like the idea that Brian Urlacher had a better career than Randy Moss goes against any football that anyone's watched. He's a first-ballot Hall of Famer. So is Randy. But if they let in 2 first-ballot guys, Ray and Urlacher, and not Randy, that'll be ridiculous. Ray's going to walk in, should walk in no matter what. And if you want to say Ray had a better career than Randy, I'll listen to it, because Ray is a Pantheon guy. Randy's a Pantheon guy. I'm getting preemptively angry, so I'm not going to talk about this anymore. Hopefully Monday, Randy's in, and it's not a problem.
Last thing before we sign off, this Hall of Fame is really special, too. John Stallworth, Lynn Swann. They're the only tandem of wide receivers in the Hall. Randy and myself would make it the second one.
Wow.
T.O. and Jerry Rice would make it the third one. So we're looking at iconic combinations that we've never seen play the game. And that should also be in the equation, that these guys had Hall of Fame careers when they had to share the ball and share the limelight with other great players.
Such a good point. CC, thanks. All right, coming up, we'll go back to a little basketball. LeBron actually, could he be heading to the
Warriors?
Let me make sure I get this right. The Golden
definitely
State
going out west.
Warriors,
We're definitely going
CC?
west. We're definitely going west to the Mississippi.
Now that the NBA season is heating up, I wanted to talk about another podcast we do at Fox Sports, and that's Chris Broussard's In the Zone. Each week, Chris breaks down what's trending in the NBA and the biggest names in the league. Previous guests include Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Shaq, John Wall, and myself. So if you love the NBA, make sure to subscribe to In the Zone wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome back to First Things First. CC is live with us from Minneapolis, home of the Minnesota Vikings, site of Super Bowl 52, and all of -4 degrees right now.
Yes.
Woohoo! Loving every degree of that, right, CC?
Yeah, all -4 of it. Yep.
Right. All right, let's talk some Philadelphia Eagles. They're attempting to win their franchise's first Super Bowl. The Pats have won 5 in the last 16 years, but the Eagles players say they aren't worried about that. Alshon Jeffery was asked about New England's dynasty and said, quote, "That expletive doesn't matter to me." CC, is it a good sign that Eagles players aren't worried about the Patriots' mystique, or is this all part of the way that they kind of ramp themselves up and gear themselves up for Sunday?
Well, the Eagles and Doug Pederson have done a great job. They realize that the mystique doesn't get into a uniform. They have to go against the 53-man roster, the great coaching staff that they have in New England, their fan base, their great ownership, but there is no mystique on the field. And Alshon Jeffery does a great job of relaying what the coach has been saying to the players. Like, this Philadelphia Eagles team hasn't lost to the New England Patriots. They haven't run roughshod over these kids. Like, these kids don't have any memories, bad ones, of New England. So it's nice to have a fresh start. And Alshon Jeffery, he's taken the right approach. But if Alshon Jeffery doesn't make any big plays, the mystique will choke him out in the fourth quarter the way that New England does other teams. So Alshon Jeffery, I love his comments, but his play on the field, because he will get a lot of press coverage. He is a big receiver, made a couple big plays in the NFC Championship game. If he's able to do that, that is how the Eagles are able to get a victory in Super Bowl 52.
So this is the part of the Patriots' mystique that's a real thing. Since LeBron James came back to the Cavs, the Pats have lost 1 playoff game. Think about that. Last 4 years, they've lost 1 playoff game. So they're 9-1 in the last 4 years in the playoffs. Like, that's not mystique. It's just unbelievable effectiveness. So one thing I think the Eagles can do is look to that 1 loss and say, okay, so the one time they got what happened? And that is where they can get confidence. And it's not about Alshon's side of the ball. That playoff game, Tom Brady was pressured 24 times. In the other 9 games, not a single one with more than 17. And the average outside of that one game is about 10. So the one way this iteration of the Pats have lost in the playoffs was Brady was either knocked down repeatedly or pressured repeatedly. It's why getting the ball out of his hands quickly is so important. It's why Fletcher Cox and Timmy Jernigan can be the key players in this game. You said on this show, CC, a few days ago that Fletcher Cox could be more important than Nick Foles. And I said, you're crazy. The quarterback's always most important. And I still think quarterback's most important. But if there was ever a game where a D tackle could be the most important player, it's a game where you're playing the Pats in the Super Bowl and you're going up against their undersized offensive line. So I think that confidence, Alshon Jeffery can't affect how many times they get to Tom Brady. But that team as a whole needs to feel like, oh, this team can be beaten, even though they've only been beaten in the playoffs once in the last 4 seasons. How did they do it? They got to Tom Brady.
Yes, and you talk about Fletcher Cox. He's just not only a player. He's going to force them that interior of their line with their center, Andrews, undersized. Their 2 guards are undersized. Fletcher Cox forces a double team. So I believe he defeats the double team and has a huge impact on the game. But what it allows, though, it allows the guys outside. Brandon Graham, a great rusher off the edge. Unsung hero of this Philadelphia defense, Chris Long, son of Howie Long. Watch for him making a play, a strip sack, because he has that wide technique, because the middle of the line has to pinch in to be able to take care of Fletcher Cox and that inside pressure of him and Tim Jernigan. But outside, they got some special rushers, guys that can situational rush. So Fletcher Cox sets the table, but these other guys on the outside, it allows them to get good matchups.
And on the other side, on the ball, since we're talking about an Alshon Jeffery quote, on the other side of the ball for the Eagles offense, I think it is really important. And I think it plays in their favor that mystique of the Patriots is so much about the quarterback. I don't think Alshon Jeffery or Torrey Smith or Nelson Aguilar or Zach Ertz look at the Patriots defense like they've been to 8 Super Bowls, because they haven't. They don't look at these guys like these guys are 5-time Super Bowl champions, because they're not. They look across, they say, you know what, Malcolm Butler, I'm sure they psych themselves up. Malcolm Butler, your whole career, we know your name because of one damn play. Like, Stephon Gilmore, you were on the bad Buffalo Bills until this season. Patrick Chung, you got cut from this team once, or you left this team once upon a time and then came back. Like, they can, with credibility, look at the guys they're going up against on the Patriots defense and say, there is no mystique
But
here.
they could say that, CC, am I right about the offense as well? It's really just Tom Brady. I mean, maybe Gronk a little bit, but the mystique comes from Bill Belichick and Tom Brady. And they could very well, Doug Pederson could very well be telling the entire team, you can go top to bottom, the rest of all these guys, they've just been bit players in this gigantic monster that is Kraft, Belichick, and Brady.
It's always part of the story, but they got good players. They got a good system. You can't say it's just New England, because their offense, they're one of the best in the league. Now, their defense, and the point that Nick brought up, I thought was a tremendous point, because, Devin McCourty, they got respect for him. And he's a good player on that defense. But Malcolm Butler, he's no Pro Bowler. He's no All-Pro player. They're 30th in pass defense. So Nick makes a great point as far as the psyche of Philadelphia's offense. When they look at the sheer numbers, Mystique can't hide those numbers. Now, what Tom Brady does as an offense, they're special. Now, this is one of the more special, because they do it with smoke and mirrors. You don't know if it's going to be Brandon Cook. You don't know if it's going to be Amendola. Deion Lewis. We haven't heard from James White in a while. He could pop up. He likes the Super Bowl. So how they do it is so unorthodox. It's no mystique to it. You have to give credit to the quarterback and his ability to deliver the ball and be so accurate.
I'm Jenna Wolf, and thank you for listening to the First Things First podcast. Make sure to subscribe and tell your friends, family, and coworkers about the podcast, which, by the way, is available on iTunes and all your favorite podcast apps. You can catch a fresh new episode every Monday through Friday on FS1, starting at 6:30 a.m. Eastern, 3:30 a.m. Pacific. So long, everyone.